We are live, and this is Senate Finance on April 29th. And committee, we are going to start. We're still struggling with doubly committed staff. We are going to finish up, I think, as of tomorrow. No, as of today, we should have our H bills out. I'm sure more will be coming our way, but we will get everything we can get, and we are going to then be doing the yield bill, which we're going to try and get out this week, so that next week we are full time on the education transformation bill. And I've got Julia coming in sometime this week. We did the agenda last Thursday, and as of 4:30, 5 o'clock on Friday, we changed the whole thing, and we continue to change it. We're dueling for joint fiscal and ledge council staff, which is making it harder for us to do any kind of preview work on the education bill. We're running out of other things, but they are hoping to vote that bill out on Friday, and we are hoping to get it on Tuesday, and that will be our life from then on. Maria has not Maria. Julia has a list of unknowns, things we don't know yet. This is over and above the district sizes. There's a whole, how do we get from here to the future state, that's kind of amorphous, but until we put some black and white to it, we aren't going to know how long we may end up trying to buy down property tax rates. So we will try and do our due diligence and all of that. But I want to try and get 137 out of here. We've been through it. It is housekeeping. Maria, come on up. Last week we went through the agreed upon, maybe not openly loved, but agreed upon changes to allow the Bitcoin, virtual currency kiosks. The two that are there, I don't know. They had 3. I don't know if they can put the 3rd back in. They had 3 when we put the moratorium on. They all belong to CoinFlip. Put in a bunch of consumer protections and are allowing them to do some larger virtual currency transactions with these consumer protections, which will allow us to monitor it. And the moratorium stays in place for another year. Yeah. So we will come back and decide, see how it goes for the next year.
Is the new version on, I don't see it on our website. Is there a version of 137?
There is not. It's pending 2 decisions the committee needs to make, whether to include the virtual currency proposal, the language we reviewed on Friday.
Yeah, I think so.
And then the other proposal was a proposal made by Chris Delia on behalf of the Vermont Bankers Association. It was a mutual savings bank, changing the governance structure a little bit. And I didn't know if you wanted to walk through that proposal or if you're ready.
That one, I just thought it has been a while since we looked at that. So these are the 2 amendments.
Yeah.
You've got a whole 25 minutes if you want to walk us through just a 22,000 foot overview of what's in the rest of the bill.
Sure.
And hopefully you have a section
I'll
by
have that
section. I
read.
have at least
Yeah.
10 pages of notes. But I took those some time ago. But as I remember, this was pretty much all technical corrections.
Okay. So we went through virtual and TPS language last week. This is just a quick walkthrough of the proposal related to the mutual savings banks. And then we can do a quick recap of all the other DMR provisions. So, and just to recap a little bit about what you heard about this proposal, again, from Chris Delia, and then you also heard from the Deputy Commissioner of Banking, in support of this language. So right now there are 2 mutual savings banks in Vermont. And one of them would like to convert to a holding company. Mutual savings banks are regulated at both the state and the federal level by the FDIC. And in preparing to convert to a holding company, the FDIC made some suggestions to Vermont's governance standards to make them more protective of the depositors. The depositors own the mutual banks, right? So that's what this proposal does. It relates just to the governance. A corporator is basically a director, a member of the board of directors is a corporator. So this particular statute concerns just the corporators. And you'll see that there are some new requirements, and these were reviewed last week, but basically, you'll see in subsection E, more than 50%, so majority of the corporators shall be depositors of the financial institution, the mutual savings bank. In addition, subsection F, at least 2/3 of the corporators shall be independent. And that is defined for purposes of this section as being an individual who's not an employee, director, or officer of the financial institution, its subsidiaries, or its affiliates.
Okay. But a depositor is an owner, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And independents do not include depositors, right? Or could they?
They could.
They could.
It
all
means
right.
not an employee or an
Not an
owner.
employee or an officer.
Yeah. And then it also then in subsection G goes on to explain the fiduciary duties of the corporators. So corporators shall be fiduciaries of the depositor base, so all corporators, and shall exercise their authority in the best interests of the depositors with a duty of loyalty and care. In exercising their duties as corporators, corporators shall consider the interests of the depositors, the borrowers, and other customers of the financial institution, the general benefit and economic well-being of the communities served by the financial institution, and the safety, soundness, and general business needs of the financial institution. So again, these are proposals that were put forward to enhance kind of the governance as it relates to protect the depositors' interests in preparation of a particular bank filing to convert to a mutual bank holding company.
Okay, so this is what the FDIC has suggested we do to our laws regarding the governance of a mutual savings bank
Correct.
in preparation. And it really is meant to make sure that the corporators are looking after the best financial interest of all the members
As opposed to shareholders.
as opposed to shareholders.
And I think the testimony I heard was by making these changes and implementing these new standards, that would make the application, which is going to be decided upon by the Federal Reserve, which governs all holding companies, a stronger application. I would believe that's a testimony I heard.
Okay. Questions, committee? See. Oh,
Okay, so you have that proposed amendment, you have the virtual currency proposed amendment, and then we can do a quick review if you want of all of the. Of your procedurally, how would you like
I
to?
think that will probably be good before we vote, because we're gonna have to vote to approve both amendments. And we are going to have to vote to approve the bill as amended. Or start over.
Okay. And I think we can do this pretty quickly because I did an initial walkthrough and I believe you heard from DFR on all of this. So I'm not gonna spend
They
a
have been
ton of
really
time.
good at
Yep.
keeping this to purely housekeeping.
Yeah, pretty much, and I'll stop at the points where, anyway, so section 1 is just about confidentiality, uniform confidentiality provisions related to all regulated entities. Section,
This was one where rather than having 5 different sections, we just, there's one confidentiality standard.
yeah, and section 2 was just updating, cross-reference from a repeal law, housekeeping. Section 3 was, rate filings, by property and casualty insurance companies. Proposal that any increase in rates be filed 30 days prior to them taking effect as opposed to 15 days after.
Which, yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, 50 years out.
Section 4 was, related to affordable housing and homeowners insurance or renters insurance, just ensuring, that there's no discrimination. For affordable housing. Section 5,
I assume if you demonstrate a higher damage rate,
other underwriting factors.
underwriting factors,
Yeah,
but just because you are
Yeah.
affordable, you
Yeah.
cannot. Day one
Yes.
be charged high.
and I think you heard that that's how DFR would interpret the existing anti-discrimination laws, but this just makes it very explicit. Section 5 is just clarifying, so the next, I think up until 14 or so, these sections all deal with captive insurance. Section 5 just says captive companies can do any type of insurance that's authorized in Vermont. There are, however, specific limitations in the captives laws of types of insurance you can't do, but it basically just this is more conforming. There's than anything else. Then we get to section 6. A number of the sections deal with, there are several sections that require the board of directors to submit under oath.
That's right.
Right, and so, but not all companies, some are LLCs. They don't have a board and officers, so all of this does is just allow the governing board to select 2 individuals. So that will appear many times throughout. Section 7 is just updating a cross-reference. Chapter 21 was repealed. Another change in section 7 was just ensuring that if a captive is formed as a mutual insurance company, it has to also comply with the general laws of mutual insurance companies. If there's a conflict with the captive laws, the captive laws control. Section 8, I think in this section, there is the governance provision. Yep. About the LLCs. Section 9, same thing.
This is who could sign, right?
Yep. Fine. There was 6 or 7 provisions that fixed that. There's also provision in this particular section that says that reports filed by risk retention groups do not have to be made public. And that's because there are credentialing, I believe NAIC requirements that apply.
Is that specific to captives?
It's specific to risk retention groups, which are
So they, some captives,
formed under federal
all
law.
captives are
Yeah,
risk retention, but there are other.
yeah. It's the type of
Yeah.
Correct. Section 10 is just like the first section on captives. Captives can do any kind of insurance in Vermont. This is specific to captives that provide reinsurance. They can provide any type of reinsurance in Vermont. Section 11 is just the governing board members selected to submit documents under oath. Section 12, same thing. Section 13, same thing.
So remember, this was pretty boring.
Yeah, I won't take that personally, but section 14.
It sounds.
It's not you, it's the draft, Maria.
The housekeeping bill.
Well, section 14,
Till we get to Kia.
well, yeah. But this is just a technical change. The outlining, I remember this was a bit of a nightmare for this section, and inadvertently a subdivision CC should have been subdivision Roman numeral.
So this
Fun,
is.
it's Roman numerals.
No,
That's
this is.
my
Okay,
That's not a substantive change. It actually conforms now with the model law that it was originally based on.
okay.
Then section 15. So this was added in commerce. These are the exemptions for money transmission licenses, and there was a proposal that was approved in the House that provided 3 additional exemptions for payroll, small payroll processors, as well as companies that don't technically engage in payroll processing. They do not have to get a money transmission license.
This was giving a problem
Some of the
to
smaller.
several of the small, just do payroll for 1 or 2 small companies. And would have had them getting licenses in multiple states. Yeah, okay.
And then section 16, again, this was added in commerce. This is the provision that allows a debtor to basically use discount points to buy down their interest rate.
That's the Rocket Mortgage.
We've heard from Rocket Mortgage. And then there are also added in commerce are 3 studies. These are all DFR studies that will be done in-house. They review model legislation or legislation that was proposed in the House, but needed additional work. So the first one is an anti-fraud provision that it was considering whether and to what extent banks could issue a transaction hold if they suspect that there's some type of fraud. So to talk to the consumer or engage in some kind of anti-fraud measures to prevent fraud. And all of these reports are due, I believe, in November this year. So before you come back next session.
Coerced debt, yeah.
And then so same thing, study on coerced debt. They all involve the interested stakeholders. And then finally, a recommendation or study about what to do in terms of genetic privacy. And you heard about some of the genetic testing companies like 23andMe that has all this data and ensuring that it doesn't go to insurance companies
How they've gone.
and perhaps
Right.
used to adversely. And then sections 20 and 21, this is the Medigap, Medicare supplemental insurance. Jen Harvey drafted these. You heard from Emily, Deputy Commissioner Brown, and Mike Fisher. I believe the improvement here is right now, if there's a rate increase to Medigap coverage, DFR, and it's over 10% and it affects more than 5,000, DFR has to do an additional kind of actuarial review. So they end up doing 2 reviews, the one that they would normally do, and then an additional third-party review, which I think just means another firm, because I think they contract with 2 firms. And then the company itself does its own actuarial review. And I believe the testimony I heard was very often they agree. And so the proposal is to not require DFR to do 2 reviews, but had enhanced kind of public reporting and disclosure requirements that allow for public comment, and particularly if the rate increases over a certain threshold,
An actuarial
10%.
expensive.
I think that was what you heard, I think the expensive and time consuming and
I would be concerned if actuaries didn't agree.
so then that brings us down to the next section, which is section 22. And the House proposal is to just have a moratorium on new kiosks in Vermont till next year, so extended a year. And the effective dates.
With the language that we looked at regarding the kiosks, would the moratorium stay in effect and that
Yes.
the language would go into effect after the moratorium or
It
immediately?
would apply to the 2 existing kiosks.
Okay.
I think the hope is that if these prove to be adequate consumer protection, that the moratorium will get lifted, or maybe lifted for more than 1 year. I think this is a balance between just saying no to technology and this. Well, yeah, one of the testimonies was actually 2 national banks in Europe have accepted cyber currency or have chosen it as their method. And so, because one of the things said that if a national bank recognizes it, that it has to be recognized. I'm not sure where that is, but I
There's a
remember
lot
the
of discussion on
discussion.
virtual currency
Yeah.
generally. I'm not aware of anything specific on kiosks,
Yeah, all right.
which is
maybe
what all
within
this
another
deals
bill,
with.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it might be another, there are definitely proposals on
yeah,
virtual currency and allowing investment, state investments.
whether we understand it or not, it's a present reality. I'm still dealing with turning on your dishwasher from your watch. Do the dishes. But it's here, and I may choose to just push the button on my dishwasher, but the it's still washing dishes by hand. But that's a choice, and I think this trial will give us some understanding as to how they could do the consumer protections work, how do they work? But allow enough transactions to go through so we have a valid assessment as to whether or not they're enough, are they too much? Okay, committee, any questions for Maria? If not, I need a motion.
We need an amendment pulling these 2 things into one.
You would, is that, well, I think maybe vote on each amendment
Each amendment,
first.
so
then I
that,
can-
and then the bill as amended. So I think the first amendment we need is the mutual
Savings bank.
savings bank. If you have a date, time that you
It's posted, last week, so there's, let me go and pull it up again.
so we know which, yeah, what version we're voting on.
Yep. Second,
Probably would have been Friday.
yep, and then I can, I feel the read in language.
I have the crypto amendment, but I don't have the bank.
Yeah. I do have it.
We need an official clean copy to take upstairs.
Yeah, but I can
Do we? No, we don't. Because we just have to take the bill as amended upstairs.
Well, it's not a strike all, right?
Correct. Right.
We want to combine this into one amendment. The finance
No, I
report.
think we should, they're so different. I think we should vote on them separately. So this is draft number 1.1. Proposal for the Bankers Association.
To vote on separate, but then have them combined into one committee report.
Yeah, we will make two
So-
amendments on the floor.
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna do two amendments.
But no, we'll vote the bill as amended.
one committee report
Right.
as
As
amended,
amended.
and then you would have by adding the virtual currency, by adding this amendment.
Right.
So instances of amendment as opposed to
So when you
strike all.
go through the bill, you will go through and say, and this is where we amended it here. They're not floor amendments.
So do you want to straw poll the amendments and then vote on the bill as amended?
No, we need to vote both amendments. Need to vote to amend the bill as proposed by the Vermont Bankers Association, draft 1.1. And then we need to vote on whatever we pull up for the cyber currency. Okay,
I'll move the proposal for the Vermont Bank, from the Vermont Bankers Association amendment to H 137.
section 23.
Draft number 1.1. As one instance of amendment to our finance committee report.
Okay,
Is that what you're doing?
yeah, any further discussion on, this is the corporators. Mutual banks will protect the membership, that are the owners of the bank, and will make it easier for them. The Federal Reserve is there to
Yes.
transition to being a holding company. Okay. Further discussion? If not, I think we can do amendments voice vote, right? Yeah. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. I'm reading that as 700. I think you do need to put that. Okay, now I need amendment.
Move a second instance of amendment to H 137 using draft number 1.1 from MCR dated 7:57 AM regarding cryptocurrency.
425-25.
Is that satisfied?
Yep.
Okay. Senator Chittenden has moved that we amend H 137 with the cryptocurrency amendment dated 4/25/25 at 7:57 AM. This is the consumer safeguards and the lifting the moratorium for one more year for the two kiosks that we have. Makes no changes to online, right? It's
Correct.
all the kiosks, but anyone that's buying cryptocurrency online can still do it.
You said lifting more, but we're extending the
We're
more.
extending, well, we're extending the moratorium for another year. It's limited to the kiosk, the two kiosks that we presently have. No new contenders until we see how these consumer protections work. Okay. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. That's 700, and now I need a motion to approve as amended.
We'll try again. I'm gonna move H 137 favorably as amended with the last two instances for our finance committee report.
Thank you.
Further discussion, anything in the bill? Now, this is the whole bill. If not, clerk will call the roll.
Yeah, sure will. Senator Chittenden,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Beck,
Yes.
Senator Gulick,
Yes.
Senator Meadows, yes, Senator Cummings,
Yes,
7-0-0.
okay, and I will report that. I get all the thumbs. Okay. Thank you, Maria.
You're welcome.
Everybody in the room.
And I will email that momentarily.
Okay.
To you
and from me, yeah.
And then you
You're
can bring
probably
it to.
watching.
Yep, okay.
Any, have we had any updates on Patrick? You're still at 2:15? Okay, so I think we can't 2:15, so we've got a 15-minute break until Patrick gets set free, license rates your needs. And then he's gonna just give us a brief revenue overview as we start our discussion about the yield bill. Do some talk on Friday about what the revenues look like in committing revenue, so he's going to give us an update just where the revenues are falling. We're still haven't quite gotten everything from April 15th, which is a big day. Since most of our revenue comes from personal income tax, but he will let us know. He has a presentation on some of the clouds, and I'd hope to get a kind of a brief update on what he sees, some of the issues that might be hanging out there, or what the risks are. I'll see if I can get him back today. And then Julia is going to walk us through the property tax yields, and the House will go through the governor's proposal, which is the 77 million buy down. The House has gotten it to only a 98.5 buy down. They're at 1.5% increase. Julia's got some other scenarios people might want to consider. And then I will be looking for motion. Or
You will today.
I'm gonna hold this over at least till tomorrow, but yeah. And I'll try and get Patrick, or if Julia doesn't finish up before we get Michael O'Grady, because Michael O'Grady like Tammy Colby when we can get them. And that I think is our last bill to get out. Yeah. That we know of so far, which is the stormwater. This committee put on the clean water fee in order to fund our clean water efforts, because the feds said we didn't have a dedicated source and they were threatening to take over. We put, as we sometimes do, it was probably a 7-year, could have been 10, sunset. That sunset's coming due, and we're being asked to consider either lifting it or extending it. So you got until 2:15. Don't go outside because we get so distracted. You go
I wasn't going outside.